New year, new me, new year, same James Jones, just better. New year, new manager for West Ham United. Will it be new year, new era under Graham Potter as woeful Julen Lopetegui waves goodbye to the London Stadium and the Rush Green training ground? Yet another short-lived spell in charge of a big club for the Spaniard. His main cheerleader, Guillem Belargue, the Spanish journalist, insisting that he was professional till the end and things were just on the brink of turning round. If only he'd been given a little bit more time. What a load of tosh, certainly, for the second bit. That is all I will say. His coaching staff made way with him. And in comes Graham Potter, the man I think quite a few fans would have preferred over the summer. I think at the time, if I'm quite frank, the England job was still up for grabs. And I think Graham Potter probably felt that he was a bit bigger than West Ham, having just got the job at Chelsea, and would try chance his arm, or at least hold out for a little bit of a project that he deemed bigger. But the clock was ticking. The England job went to Tuchel, and there were less and less options for Potter, I think, really. His stock was probably gradually falling. The Kirbishley syndrome, I think it was former West Ham boss Alan Kirbishley, who said that he made the mistake of being too picky once he fell out of management. And if too much time goes by without you being in charge of a Premier League club, people just forget about you or assume you're not up for it anymore. So that is my sense of what it took to get Graham Potter to the London Stadium. A 2.5-year deal rather than the short-term option that we are told the board were trying to give him. But James Jones, Graham Potter in charge, there's no doubt in my mind whatsoever that Graham Potter is going to be better than Julen Lopetegui was at managing West Ham United. The doubt, so there's a slight amount of doubt that remains as to whether he can get us back to the levels we saw, and I mean European football, on a consistent basis in the last 3 years. How are you? How are you feeling now the reign of Potter has started?
I'm good, thanks, mate. I'm quite enthused by it. I'm quite happy about it. He was a name that I said on this very podcast in the summer before Lopetegui was appointed that I felt that we should be looking at, and we should be probably prioritising over a manager like Lopetegui. Didn't happen, obviously, and I'm enthused by it. Even before the Villa game, obviously it was a very quick turnaround, and I was like, yeah, I think this is the manager, that the type of manager that we should have been looking at in the first place, in terms of style of play, in terms of their just general ethos and general outlook on how the modern game should be played. It falls more in line with what the fans were calling for post Moyes. Whether it's going to be perfect or not, it remains to be seen. But one thing that we have to do is give the bloke time. Like, he's got 2.5 weeks to bring in some players that he wants. And then obviously the summer's going to be a big one for him. But obviously with PSR and all of that, it remains to be seen how much money he's going to be able to spend and which players we're going to have to sell in order to fund it. So between now and the end of the season will be quite interesting in terms of how he lines us up and how he approaches it. But I think it's a good appointment, and I'd like to think he can get us back up to at least competing in the top 10, and then we can go from there. I think he's got it in him to take us to Europe, I think, but it's just whether he'll get the time to do it. And I think he's the type of manager, he's a project manager, isn't he? So he needs the time and the patience, and whether he gets that or not is a different matter. But good appointment. I'm happy.
Yeah, okay, mate. Well, obviously worth noting the club did have a look at him over the summer. I think it was a deal that probably would have cost them a little bit too much money, or a little bit more money than they were willing to spend, to be fair. But look, we'll get into that in more detail, James, shortly. The 2025 has kicked off, James. It's Sunday morning. This is a lovely time to do the podcast. The sun's shining, a bit of frost on the ground here in South London. There certainly is anyway. Don't go too weather heavy, Jonesy, but what's it looking like in Bury? St Edmunds, in case you're listening for the first time. James doesn't live in Greater Manchester.
No, it's exactly the same. Sunny, blue skies, a little bit of frost on the ground. It looks like a glorious morning, to be fair. I've not been out yet, but I probably will do at some point. I'll venture out.
Now, this is a surprise to me, James, because I woke up this morning to a text on a Sunday from you at about 8:14, I think it was. What time for the podcast today, mate? And whilst I absolutely love the eagerness, Jonesy, you've known me long enough now to know that the chances of me being awake at 8:14 a.m. on a Sunday, or indeed a Saturday, are extremely slim. But new year, new me, dry January and all that, severe weight loss kick going on. I'm feeling much fresher in the mornings on the weekend. So 9:10, I think it was, that I arose and managed to text you back. Now you told me you'd been up since 4 a.m. on a Sunday. Just talk everyone through that quickly, because is this part of Stoicism? Which one of the 2024 self-help books that you read in 2024 did the up and at 4 a.m. on a Sunday come from?
None of them. I've been an early bird for years now. Recently, admittedly, over the last 18 months, it's been sort of closer to 6. But
you've been having a lay-in.
I've been having a bit of a lay-in, yeah. And I like mornings. For me are the best part of the day, especially since Harrison came along. It's a good opportunity to get up, get what I need to get done before he gets up, and kind of parenting consumes the mornings and the days and all the rest of it. I can get out, get a bit of work done, have a bit of a read, go to the gym if I need to, and it just allows me to have me time before. But yeah, I don't know how you do it, getting up at 9 o'clock. I think that's half the day gone. Literally half the day gone. There are some mornings when I'm up sort of silly o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. That I would, by the time Lucy gets up, she gets up literally at the very, very last minute. Sometimes we have to leave the house to take Harrison to school about 8:20, and sometimes she's still in bed at 8:05. And I'm like, come on! But by then that's my
sort of woman.
On a weekday, I've done 3 hours work by then before anyone's even thought about waking up, let alone waking up. And I just, I'm a type.
What time you go to bed though? So all of that sort of. I mean, again, there are a few other hurdles that would get in the way of this, but there's no way we could be married, because that is everything you described. Then is like literally making my skin crawl. But what sort of time are you going to bed for that? Because like you're a morning bird or whatever you called it, I am a night owl. But what sort of time are you going? Look, time to wind down a bit here, because I'm assuming Harrison's getting to bed at like 7ish.
7ish, yeah. I'm going to bed sort of between 10 and 11 every now and then. Maybe sometimes a little bit later. And if I do go to bed later, I'll wake up later. And it's not bang on 4 o'clock every single morning. I'm up and at 'em, grabbing the day by the proverbials. I do obviously still like my sleep, and I make sure I get enough hours in every night. But it will depend.
Well, it doesn't sound like you do, mate. Because if you can go to bed at 10 p.m. and wake up at 4, that's not enough hours.
Yeah, I mean, the average 6 hours a night is enough. It is enough.
Maybe for you, mate, but
you can have more, and obviously the more the better. But 6 hours enough. 6 hours a night is enough to be able to perform at an optimal level. Let's put it that way. And to be fair, I think on my Whoop band, available for sponsorship, by the way, Whoop. If anyone's listening who works there, I think I average about 6.5 to 7 hours a night. So this morning, admittedly, was a especially early one at 4, but it's normally between 4 and 5.
Did you wake up naturally, or was that an alarm?
This morning I woke up naturally, but then about 5 minutes after I woke up, Lucy also woke up, surprisingly.
Yeah,
I was sitting in my office where I'm sitting now, and suddenly she gets up, and I'm like, oh my god, what the hell's going on here?
Something's seriously wrong. Yeah.
Well, it turns out she could hear, weirdly, and I don't know if any of our listeners know how to fix this. I would be very appreciative of it. She could hear, like when you got a gas cooker and you got like the ignition, the click.
Yeah.
That just started going off.
Really?
It's just automatically, like, it's not on, Nothing's pushing it
Wild.
down. Nothing's falling on it or anything. And it's just going
Yeah.
off on one of them. And she could hear
Oh.
it. Well, it woke her up from downstairs in the bedroom. I'm sitting in the office, which is next to the bedroom, and I can't hear a thing.
No.
So we've gone down and we spent 15 minutes at 4:15 this morning trying to work out what the hell's going on. Couldn't fix it. So we had to turn the cooker off.
Right.
Turn the hobs off, so it's a bit annoying. So
Wild.
that's why. And I end up just going, well, it is Sunday. I could go back to bed, but no, I'll stay up. So yeah.
Jesus, it's all go in Bury St Edmunds, James.
It is,
isn't
yeah. So if any listeners know how to fix that, please get in touch with me because I'm at a loss here. I'm at a real loss.
What profession would you need to be in? Do you think you just like a straight up gas engineer? Because that feels like the sort of thing where a gas engineer would come across, like the ignition on a gas cooker. I know it's not directly.
It's almost a
feels
cross
like
between an electrician and a gas engineer. So if anyone's got both, then happy days. But obviously, I've turned the electrics
or just
off.
an oven specialist.
Yeah, and the gas is definitely off. I did have visions of me sort of just flicking it on and suddenly a massive explosion, and I'll be on the news. House explodes in Bury St Edmunds. But yeah, I don't know. I'm at a loss. I'm going to have to spend some time Googling it later. And I probably should have spent time Googling it at 4 o'clock this morning, but I didn't.
I must admit, mate, I would have done. I heard a horror story the other day, actually. A guy I was on a job with at work who had to phone an ambulance the other day because his gas cooker was faulty and he thought he turned it off and he hadn't, and he could smell this weird like smell in the air. He'd thought he turned it off, gone to have a nap for like 2 hours, got up, smelled this strong smell of gas, and like his legs all started going all weak. He turned all the stuff off because he realised the gas was still leaking out the broken cooker, and then he went outside of his flat to get some like fresh air, and he collapsed. And he was passed out on the pavement for 2 hours. And because he will admit this, he's sort of on the scruffier side of life. And apparently people just walked past him for 2 hours when he was collapsed on the pavement outside his flat because they thought he was like a vagrant or a homeless person. And yeah, the ambulance turned up eventually. And yeah, he'd been laying on the floor outside his flat for 2 hours because he'd inhaled too much gas from his faulty gas cooker. So yeah, get your gas cookers checked out, kids. That's all I will say. I am surprised though, James, you getting up at 4 a.m. that you don't have an ice bath or a plunge pool or anything like that. You, as I said to you just before we come on, have got 4 a.m. ice bath written all over you.
It's on my radar, and I would not be surprised if by the summer I've invested. But yeah,
got to ease your way in. You can't be doing it at 4 a.m. in January in your garden.
Yeah, no way. Got to give myself a chance. But yeah, I've toyed with cold showers.
Yeah,
and I've struggled with that. That is
brutal, aren't they? Yeah.
But they're great. They're really, really good. A lot of good benefits to it. But cold plunges, I'm not sure. My brother-in-law is really keen on it, but I'm just stopping myself. But maybe I just need to jump in like you're doing.
Well, that's what they say, isn't it? It's what it says on the tin.
I just got to jump in and buy one. But yeah, I don't know. What I don't want to do is buy it and then kind of bottle it, and it's just sitting in the garden for a couple of years, just like
mate,
and dust and that, because they're quite expensive.
100%.
We'll see.
Surely you can get a second-hand one on eBay for someone who's done exactly that. Just bought one
maybe.
and then sitting in the garden.
Yeah.
All right. Well, look, we're open to sponsorship from either Whoop bands, which, if you're wondering what they are kind of like a weird smartwatch sort of thing that track loads of stuff that James has obviously got, and and it's so open to sponsorship from them or any sort of ice bath, plunge bath people. Look, we will actually talk about football for the rest of this podcast. Just nice to catch up between me and Jonesy about what's going on in our lives as well. We get quite a lot of reaction to most of those chats at the beginning. So, and as well, one thing what I do want to say, and this might be a bit of a funny time to sort of bring it up, to be fair, but thank you so much to everyone so far who has signed up to the We Are West Ham podcast Patreon so far. Some of the ones I'm looking at here, the more recent ones: Steph Rum, Jim Odie, Alan Hicks, Richard Williams, Rooster, Jonathan De Young, Vince Conway, Paul True. They're just some of the more recent ones that I'm looking at in front of me right now. So thanks so much to you guys for signing up to the We Are West Ham podcast Patreon. We made that announcement last week on the podcast. It's been a long time coming, to be honest. As we explained, me and James put an awful lot of time and effort into this podcast, as we have done over the last 5 years. And this year, a few personal and professional changes to mine and James' life meant that we had to take someone else on, which we've done in young Alex Smith, fellow West Ham season ticket holder. He's absolutely brilliant. So he's doing a lot of the invisible stuff that you don't see, the editing, the social media management, the uploads, all that sort of stuff, which in addition to the sort of couple of hours me and James spend actually talking on the podcast each week, there's at least that much time that goes into getting it all out and keeping all our platforms sort of up to date behind the scenes as well. So we've brought Alex on this season and we've had to pay him. So we have made the decision to offer a Patreon service in order to keep this as a viable option for me and James. So thank you very much to those of you who signed up already. If you're thinking about it, please do. And if you feel like you can and you like what we do, if you're a new listener or a long-termer, there's even more value in it, James. We've been doing it for 5 years, I think, because we've been putting this out for free, which is what we always said we wanted to do after we started this podcast from our live radio show, which the radio station we were doing the live radio show went bust in COVID. And then, we decided to carry it on. We wanted to do it for as long as possible for free. So we had adverts and stuff. Within that, we lost a bit of a deal over the summer, and then those changes, as I mentioned, means we did have to do this. So if you're thinking, someone else will do it, don't think that way. If you like what we do and you're happy to chip in and you can afford to, it's only a few quid every month. I was just thinking beforehand, James, it's things that it costs less than. It certainly costs less than a gym membership. It costs less than most coffees at any high street coffee place. It costs less than almost everything, really. So if you like what we do, you get 2 podcasts a week. And if you pay, you get ad-free listening and you get every episode 24 hours before any non-Patreon members. But we did want to say, James, didn't we, that when starting this, we didn't want to sort of do anyone out of content if they couldn't pay or didn't want to. So you don't get a minute less if you don't pay. You just get it a bit later and you have to listen to the ads.
Indeed. And it also costs less than some other podcasts that use Patreon, just saying, naming no names. So we are the cheaper of the podcasts on Patreon in our space.
I wouldn't get us into one of them.
No,
James.
no, because
I've had my fair share of Twitter battles this week, as you know.
Yes, you have. I will add on to that those that are a little bit more expensive than us are worth the value. But
absolutely.
We are the cheaper in the space. Yeah, that's what I'm going to say.
Exactly. Yeah. Look, anyway, so thanks to those of you who signed up so far. If you're thinking about it, or you think, someone else will do that, please don't think that, because obviously, like we've said, at the end of every season, me and James do have a look at this, and sort of weigh up whether we can still sort of afford, from both a time and a money perspective, to keep this going. And the amount of signups we get between now and the end of the season on the Patreon will heavily guide our decision over what we do next season. So if you like what we do and keep going and you can afford it, please do consider signing up on the Patreon. It's patreon.com/wearewesthampodcast, I believe, James, and all the links, etc. You can find in the description to this pod and on our social media platforms. Right, Jonesy, you flashed it up on the screen, patreon.com/wearewesthampodcast. Well played. Stay listening, because I'm going to have some messages. I want to cover some messages from everyone who's got in touch this week, and we will have a chat in more detail next up about the Julen Lopetegui Graham Potter situation. Then we'll review the Aston Villa game. Our We Are West Ham colleague Alex Smith made the trip up to Villa Park along with 5,000 other loyal West Ham fans. A 2-1 defeat. 1-0 up. The general sense was that it was a lot better. Disappointing to lose, of course, but we'll have a look at that as well, and we'll have a brief look ahead to the Fulham game, which swings around pretty quickly. Tuesday night at home to Fulham in the Premier League, and we'll have a separate Opposition View podcast in the next couple of days. Stay with us. Loads coming up on the We Are West Ham podcast as a new era starts next. Right, James. Me and you have been on the BBC, Talk Sport, and I believe ITV in the last week since Julen Lopetegui was sacked. Okay. And in that time, I imagine you got asked exactly the same questions as I did. You've written your BBC Sport column as always. And I think so. My point being, we're sort of sought out, which is great, and sort of, gives us gives us a bit of like proof that what we're doing is getting noticed in the right places, and that people respect it and respect our opinions. You and I, which is brilliant, don't always agree on stuff, which makes for good content. I imagine we both got asked almost the exact same questions this week, right? Where did it go wrong for Lopetegui? No one was really asking me if they felt like we'd given him enough time or not. I got asked that maybe, I think, on the Sports Bar. Jason Cundy and Jamie O'Hara on TalkSport asked me that last week, but it was a question easy to bat away. And then it was sort of about Graham Potter. So I suggest on the podcast we do it chronologically. Now, you took longer than I did to want rid of Lopetegui. We spoke to Alex last week on the podcast, he was even more patient than you somehow. I wasn't having him from the off really. And people will go, your beloved David Moyes, that's the only reason you didn't give him any time. Now it's not, okay. We covered that on the podcast a bit last week. I just felt from the off, the system it just looked too much what he was trying to do, which we've covered on the pod already. So have you got anything else to say on Lopetegui? I feel like we've sort of done it. Have you got anything else to say as far as, what we saw from him on the pitch? It feels like everyone's sort of singing the same hymn sheet now. Before I ask you about how it all unfolded last week, have you got anything to say on Lopetegui and his style of play and how it went down first? Or should we just launch straight into how it went down, and West Ham in for some criticism about not handling it very professionally and very well? I've got some thoughts on that. So you tell me.
I think all that's left to say is that it was very, very obvious that it was a bad fit. He struggled to get the players to understand what he wanted from them. And as a result, he's no longer manager of the club. And I think, yes, every now and then you go, oh, hang on, is that a sign that things are changing? The result at Newcastle, the 4-match unbeaten run against teams in and around us. And you think, well, okay, well, maybe. But the fact is that we were conceding too many shots and conceding a lot of goals per game, and we were having a lot of shots but weren't scoring enough, and that's just not sustainable. And it wasn't sustainable for a good 4 or 5 months. So essentially, any manager in any situation lost their job a lot sooner. I think he was very lucky to cling on for as long as he did. But yeah, it just wasn't a right fit in the end. I was hopeful for a good few months that yes, maybe it might work, but it became clear from mid-October onwards that I don't see this one lasting.
No, quite. I mean, it's funny. I think one thing we just should point out, right? Because and I've only sort of learnt this since our last podcast, because we were saying, oh, it's odd timing. Now, lots of people will have seen a picture circulating this week of Graham Potter and Tim Steidten in conversation. Well, I can confirm that was actually after the Leicester game, 3-1 defeat at Leicester on the 3rd of December.
Because he was for that game.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so we were scratching our heads, weren't we? Going, oh, it's peculiar how we lose to Leicester, then we beat Wolves at home, draw 1-1 with Bournemouth, draw 1-1 with Brighton, and then beat Southampton away. That just seems really, really strange that that's his best run of the season, basically, wasn't it? 4 unbeaten is his best run of the season. And then off the back of 2, to be fair, predictable defeats, albeit that they were both by, huge margins, 5-0 home to Liverpool and 4-1 away to Man City, both defeats that games you're likely going to lose, whoever your manager is. Why on earth, it just seems the timing was odd. Well, yeah, I can confirm that was after Leicester, that game. So the discussions were in place already. So we were saying, when do you think the board decided? That appears to have been the time. We lost 5-2 at home to Arsenal. Then that game at Leicester was pretty woeful. I'd obviously been thinking about it before. The meeting then takes place between Tim Starton and Graham Potter. And then it probably weirdly made it a little bit more awkward after that. There was some ongoing negotiations, to be fair, between West Ham and Potter. They wanted to offer him a shorter term deal. Potter was like, no, and fair play to him, to be fair. He's like, look, if you want me, you want me. And he's not really a firefighter manager, is he? That's probably not. He's in a position where he doesn't have to take the job. He doesn't want to put himself in that pigeonhole this early in his career. So fair play to him. So what I'm saying is there were conversations going on as far back as the 3rd of December. So it was obviously in West Ham's mind, and quite understandably so. It did look pretty bad. Now, what are your thoughts, James, on how it all played out? Because West Ham's board have been absolutely hammered, right? And we pride ourselves on this podcast of taking it as an objective view as possible when it comes to all things the board. You got absolutely hammered earlier this season when we put out a clip from the podcast of you not necessarily defending David Sullivan. You weren't defending his record, but you were just being really objective. And I agreed with you, so I just sort of escaped too much abuse because it was you saying the words on the clip that Alex put out. But you were saying that, look, you can't just blame David Sullivan for absolutely everything that goes wrong. He got rid of Moyes, which lots of fans wanted. He then appointed a manager and backed him heavily over the summer. He's appointed a sporting director to take some of the the load off of him, if you like, on transfers. And you said, there are things that he can be criticised for, but it waters down those arguments if you just criticise him for absolutely everything. Now, so on that note, again, all the abuse you got and that we get regularly doesn't cow us into changing our opinions on things. So it was worth reminding everyone that, we do try and be as objective as possible on all matters board. And I found myself defending the board a little bit again publicly on the radio and stuff the last week or so in several interviews. But what is your thoughts? Give me your opinion on how it all played out as far as Julen Lopetegui being made to take 2 training sessions, I believe it was, after the stories had come out, where it was pretty obvious that Graham Potter was in the running, those discussions were taking place, and that basically that Lopetegui's time was up.
Well, I mean, just going back to that meeting in Leicester. After that, obviously we didn't see that photo until last week. But after that, reports had come out, and I remember reading them and even covering them at work. That Graham Potter was literally waiting in the wings, waiting for the phone call, waiting for Lopetegui to be sacked. He was interested. He wanted the job. He saw West Ham as the perfect opportunity. For well over 6 weeks ago, those sort of reports were coming out. So. It wasn't so much a surprise that they didn't end up making that change and got him in, but for me, the way it unfolded early last week made me a little bit embarrassed about the way the club was doing business. The way everything unfolded publicly was, in my view, a bit of a disgrace and made us a bit of a laughingstock as a football club. That might sound a little bit strong, a little bit harsh, but
it does. Yeah.
Not at any other club does that happen. You don't see it. Maybe at Chelsea, but you've literally got a running commentary of everything that's going on behind the scenes at the football club, without any thought towards how Lopetegui might be feeling in that situation. The geezer's rocking up and still taking training, knowing full well that he's going to get sacked any minute now. I mean, if I'm him, fair play for him even bothering. I mean, I would have just gone, ta-da, I'm out.
Yeah, but he's not. No, you don't do that with the payoff on the table, do you?
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe not so much I resign, but if you're going to make the decision now. But that's what the club should have done. They should have gone. It came out on Monday night or Monday afternoon that it was on the verge of it. It was Tuesday. I can't remember which day it was. And it was going to be Potter, and then the decision isn't made until Wednesday morning, or the announcement isn't made until Wednesday morning. Just do it then. Just announce it then. The fact that it was played out publicly just really, really frustrated me. It was like, we do not need to know all of this. We knew he was a dead man walking months ago. If you've got Potter lined up and he's a done deal,
but it wasn't a done deal.
Regardless, just don't leak it. Someone inside that club, and I know a lot of people have their suspicions as to who it is. Someone in that club has leaked it for a reason, and I still don't really know what that reason is.
But you can't just guarantee that it's come from inside the club. I'm not saying that there aren't, that there aren't people high up members in the club who talk to. To be honest, I don't want to go too hard on them, James, because I talk to some of them.
No, of course. But mate, at the end of the day, someone close to
the manager. What I'm saying is, but what I'm also saying is, Lopetegui's got a camp. Like, he's got people behind him. Graham Potter's got people behind him. Like, there are. It's not just a one side. I know what you're saying, but it's not just a one-sided. All I would say is, I don't think every single piece of information that everyone was made aware of over the past week or so came from the club. Some of it did, I'm sure, but it's not. I know what you're saying, but do you not think though that the fact that, the meeting, it is also difficult. I'm not saying none of it is comes out of West Ham, but it's also very, very difficult in the modern day and age, given how many people are involved in these things and in different camps. And Lopetegui's got agents. His staff will talk to members of the press. Guillem Biaga is obviously well in with Lopetegui, his fellow Spaniard, and all his coaches are from the same country as well. It's very, very, very difficult in the modern day to keep a lid on these things, given so many people are involved. So the fact that meeting took place on the 3rd of December, don't you think actually the club and everyone involved, certainly on Potter's side, did very, very well indeed to keep it under wraps for as long as they did? And I will say now, my view on this is actually, I think that the announcement came probably 24 to 48 hours too early, because it was obvious. I think making him take training is a bit out of order. I do think once it's so blatant, because I remember it was on the back page of a few of the papers, and I do remember seeing it on a few of the back pages in the morning and thinking, knowing he was taking training that day, I did feel a bit for him there. You've got to walk into training and there'll be newspapers scattered about everywhere. You'd like to think that on that day the club staff had been sensible enough not to hand them out and leave them on the breakfast tables, etc., like they normally do. But I did sort of think, it's a bit brass, making him take training while these stories are all over the back pages. But first of all, the board have to act in the best interests of West Ham United. And I do think, as crass as it might sound, I do think that the best interests of the club overall, unfortunately, have to take precedent over one man's feelings, particularly an outgoing manager. But I would like to say staunchly now that I do think it happened too late. Once it became obvious and it was all over the papers, then you got to pull him and go, look, it's done, mate. Don't worry about it. But the reason it went on so long is because there was some severe negotiations going on with Graham Potter. Now, the club were offering him a shorter term deal than the 2.5 year one he signed, and I do think that is indicative itself of, come on, you're not committing. That doesn't exactly scream, we're really sure of Graham Potter, we really want him. If you're only trying to give him a deal to the end of the season, I know you've got to try and protect your liabilities, financial liabilities where you can, but like that's not instilling confidence in the fan base and everyone by offering him a short-term deal. But there was lots of haggling going on. Now, my personal opinion is that West Ham were trying to sort someone out before they got rid of Lopetegui, because as well, there was no obvious choice for caretaker manager to take over. People go, I'll give it to Nobes. That's insulting to Mark Noble in his current position. Mark Noble doesn't want to be a coach of West Ham United. He's
he said it publicly as well. He doesn't want to be a coach.
Yeah, exactly. He's in a director's position because of that. He went to Harvard and done a course. People just sort of go, so it's Nobes, thinking he's a smart, switched on bloke who's in a director's position for a reason. And he's like Harvard degree in like sports organization management that he's got. Like it's insulting to just say, I'll give it to Noble. And there's no one else. All of Lopetegui's staff who've gone were linked to him. It's easy to give it to one of the academy coaches, but like this is Premier League and the FA Cup, and you're paying Lopetegui. You're paying him to be your coach. So if as his employer you want him to carry on that job until you decide you're going to terminate his contract, then so be it. He also gets the payoff at the end of it. So if the money that's about to hit his bank, or will do over the next few months, however they stagger that remuneration payment, if that I would say that few million quid to have a couple of awkward training sessions after being a pretty abysmal manager, I don't really see it as bad. I think if you really drill into the details, you can kind of see why it played out like that. And I think the thing they did wrong was just not letting him go as soon as it was all in the papers.
Yeah, I agree with that bit. I disagree with the training thing, because if you're sacking him, you've decided he's not good enough to coach the football team. So why are you making him take 2 training sessions after you've made that decision?
Who would you have had taken it then? I'm sort of in agreement with you though, aren't I? Because I'm saying that's when they should have done it. They should have done it before that. But I think not saying it's the right thing to do, because I don't, but I think a contributing factor and a reason for that is A, they hadn't quite done the deal with Potter yet, and B, and that their focus was like that was hoovering up a lot of board time and focus, and that who would you have got in to take it? Because his entire it's not like Kevin Nolan's still kicking about. I think the only one who stayed is Xavi Valero, the goalkeeper coach.
The guy's untouchable. He's on his 4th West Ham manager now. Good luck to the bloke.
Like Lopetegui's going, right, lads, we're all going to do a goalkeeper session today, just in case someone ever gets sent off and you have to go and goal. No, but who would you have? Seriously, that's a contributing factor.
I don't know, but then we'd have had that dilemma if they'd have sacked him immediately as it hit the papers and gone, right, we're just going to pull the trigger now.
Yeah, but I'm saying I think that's why they didn't. Soon as it did, but I think that's the wrong decision at that stage.
Maybe. I mean, I don't really know. I mean, someone commented underneath our video from last week saying Kevin Keane's still at the club. He's been a caretaker before
in the academy. Yeah.
He would have been an option.
But he's also got a job to do. Do you know what I mean?
He's also got a job to do, yeah.
Like a day-to-day important job.
The difference is that the under-18s will have other coaches as well. So it could have been the case of, right, Kev, you go and sort the first team out, and then your assistants can just sort the under-18s for a couple of days while we sort this out. And he'll know the players. He's in and around the training ground. He's in and around the club. But for me, that's all by the by. I think, I do disagree with what you said about, slightly about what you said about, the club. The interests of the club are more important than the feelings of one man.
Come on, that is true.
It's true, but at the same time, you still got to conduct yourself respectfully as a football club towards someone.
I agree. Yeah.
And I just don't
that's why I think it was 48 hours too late. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think the situation was done in a respectful manner towards Lopetegui. And we've seen the reports that apparently him and his team are livid with the way it all unfolded. They're not happy about it, understandably.
But you would say that, wouldn't you? I suppose.
Well, of course, yeah. But I mean,
Like he was an objectively terrible manager. I think we've got to remember that.
Yeah, but he's come out. He came out in his little Instagram post, showed a lot of class for that actually, and just went. I felt like probably could have done something. Felt like it was a little bit too early, but I think he even signed it off once a hammer, always a hammer, which I thought was a little bit strong. So, mate, but fair enough. Like, showed a bit of class with it, but I just think that there's ways of going about things, and I don't think we conducted ourselves as a football club, or those involved in that decision conduct themselves in a respectful way. So there is still a human being at the centre of all of that who is still grieving, having lost his father only a couple of weeks ago or a few weeks ago. Who you have to consider the emotional effects of the way in which that played out on Lopetegui. Regardless of whether you think he deserved the sack or not, I think we're all in agreement that he did. But there's just ways of going about it, and I just wasn't impressed with the way it unfolded. And then we're in agreement that they actually did pull the trigger two days too late.
Yeah, definitely.
And it was just a bit like, guys, like, this doesn't happen like this at other football clubs. Like, you hear that a manager's on the verge of being sacked, and then not long after those reports, he's gone.
Yeah.
And then you start hearing the links. This took 2 days for it to come out. And in those 2 days, you're hearing him taking training. You're hearing about his staff are upset. And you got Guillain Balaguer on Talk Sport going, no, like, backing his mate up. And it went on for way too long. And then at 8 o'clock Thursday morning, they announced a new guy. And it was just a bit like, we could have avoided all of that. Very, very easy.
No. I agree. I just think the biggest mess was at the end. One thing, final thing on this, Jonesy, before we move on to Potter, is that I think, are you in agreement with me that I do think it come from, I know people are just so quick to slag off the club, but I am of the opinion that they were keen to have someone in place for when they sacked Lopetegui.
Yes.
And so they wanted to get that done. And I am also of the opinion, because they would have got absolute, and you must agree with me here, well, you don't have to if you don't want to, but I'm sure you will. They would have got absolutely hammered, right, for sacking him. And if the best option you can come up with, right, and I'm not slagging you for that because it's probably the best answer, the best option you could come up with for a stand-in's Kevin Keane, right? So assume that his job that he's currently doing, which is an important one for West Ham, can just be benched for a while. Just say they've sacked Lopetegui on the 3rd of December after the Leicester game. The board would have got absolutely hammered, right, if they didn't have anyone lined up for, and that would have been the quote. Oh, can't, but it's so amateur. How can you sack a manager and not have anyone lined up? It's absolutely pathetic. That's supposed to be your job. And now look, we've got the under 18s. I think that's what Kevin Keane does at the moment. Under 18s and a bit more of the academy stuff. Kenny Brown's there as well, I think. That's pathetic. How can you do that? And look, leave an inexperienced one of our under 18s coaches in charge for 3 or 4 massive Premier League games. Blah blah blah. I will not accept any arguments that wouldn't have been the line of criticism from lots of fans. Do you agree?
I do agree.
Therefore, isn't it prudent to try and have someone lined up?
Yes, I do agree. But I think it's worth pointing out, going back to the photograph that was leaked, that it was common knowledge that the club had spoken to Graham Potter way before that photograph was leaked. It was common.
The photo was pretty like hands down, like caught bang to rights, wasn't it?
Yeah,
before
but it was
sort of rumor stuff.
We knew that came out, and everyone immediately thought, "Oh, that's from this week." Obviously,
exactly.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
So okay, that photo was after the Leicester game. Well, we've known probably maybe since the Leicester game, if not a little bit before, that there had been contact between Graham Potter and the club. There's been reports in the media about it. Reports that I mentioned earlier about the fact that he was literally he'd all but agreed to take the job, and he was waiting for the phone call. So I don't see any other situation other than someone close to those conversations from the club have leaked it. But I don't know. I just think,
yeah, at that stage, they get inundated on the reg with calls from journalists, right? Day in, day out, from all sorts of outlets. And the longer you go on ignoring those, or if someone calls you and go, no, nothing to report, then the story that comes out is, no action. West Ham not taking action over woeful form of Lopetegui.
Oh no,
and that's
I
the end of the
know how it
story.
works.
They get
I know how
like,
it works. I don't know. I just think the whole thing could have been avoided. But the club were right to wait until they had someone lined up.
Yeah. But when it became blatantly obvious,
and mate, at the end of the day, if they'd have just sacked him, and if it meant Kevin Keane taking training for 2 days before they'd sorted those negotiations out, fine, do it.
Yeah,
do it.
We are in agreement on that. We are, but it needs to be close with Potter, and he negotiated hard, did Graham Potter, rightfully so, because he felt he was worth more than the short-term deal that was initially on the table. Look, we'll leave it here, James, before we move on to Potter and Lopetegui. Right, these are the jobs he's had as a senior manager. Okay, so I'm not counting when he was Real Madrid B team or the Spain under 19s, 20 and 21s. FC Porto, 78 games in charge. Spain manager, first team, 20 games in charge. Sacked when he announced before the World Cup 2018 that he was going to Real Madrid. So Spain were like, "I will see you later. You could have waited till afterwards." Real Madrid, 14 games in charge. 170 games in charge of Seville, hands down his most successful period as manager. 27 games in charge of Wolves, and 22 games in charge of West Ham. I think if we see Lopetegui as a manager again in the Premier League, I will be stunned. Graham Potter, then, James, we've given our brief thoughts already, or you have certainly earlier in the podcast, about you are feeling pretty positive about it. We'll go into the Aston Villa game in a bit more detail if Alex can join us in the next hour or so. You're feeling good about it? Just give me a bit more detail, basically. Graham Potter finally appointed. He's sort of saying all the right things. I noticed the glow up has sort of like major glow up he had at Chelsea. He's sort of like toned that down a little bit. Like he looks better than he did at Brighton considerably, but he's not quite as like fresh out the barbers as he was at Chelsea. What are your general thoughts and feelings?
Well, my first thought was I was absolutely gutted he wasn't wearing a turtleneck on his unveiling. Absolutely loves a turtleneck, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And I think I tweeted, for that reason alone, he's got my unwavering support, win, lose or draw. Because I absolutely adore a turtleneck. This weather's perfect for it. I was wearing one yesterday. Super. Guy's a true fashion icon. But yeah. Fashion aside, and you mentioned there, he said all the right things, and I mean, it's not terribly hard for anyone to say all the right things in their first interview at a football club. You mentioned how great the fans are, you mentioned how big the football club is, you mentioned how good the current players are, and how attractive it is, and all you got to do is do that, and then you got fans swooning over you immediately. And that's exactly what I was doing on Thursday morning. Going, he's mentioned the academy, he's mentioned us. And
James, what he did, which made me swoon all over him, was mention what an achievement it was for David Moyes, and you don't do everything that he did by fluke.
Yeah, I was impressed by that line. You don't win a European Cup by fluke. And I was like, I like that.
Talking about how that was a platform that he wants to build on.
Yeah, and obviously he made a big thing about 20 months out, he was waiting for the right opportunity. And you mentioned right at the beginning about, he was probably running out of time before he felt like he probably had to take a job. And I think where West Ham are concerned, everyone's made a big thing about, he was waiting for the right opportunity and West Ham were the one. Yeah. I think it's probably a combination of the two. West Ham was an attractive option for him, probably one of the most attractive options that he's had recently. But he must have had in the back of his mind going, I mean, if I leave it any longer. I think a report's come out recently that he's since he left Chelsea, he's had 10 clubs and 4 countries offer him a position, and he's turned them down. I think one of the clubs was Ajax that he turned down. and a few countries. So part of me is like, well, great. You know, he feels like we're the club that he can really sort of.
I think he fancied the England job.
He probably did, and I mean, who wouldn't? You know, if you're a modern day manager, who wouldn't fancy the England job, especially if you're English? But if we're the next best thing for a manager like Graham Potter, then fantastic. And I do, like I said right at the beginning, I'm enthused by it. I genuinely believe if we give him enough time and we give him the backing in the transfer windows to get the players that he needs, then we're going to see a West Ham that we wanted to see post, or a lot of the fans wanted to see post Moyes in terms of more of an attacking style, more sort of possession-based approach to the game. And he's the manager that can deliver that. But it's not going to happen overnight, and that's where that's why I'm a little bit concerned about. Are the fans going to be understanding of the fact that this isn't going to be an overnight thing? It's going to be a year, 18 months of having to go through a little bit of rubbish and having to sort of have a few difficult results and difficult performances. But there will be a lot of really good positive signs, which perhaps we were kind of desperate to see under Lopetegui, but weren't really seeing enough of.
Exactly.
We'll see more of that. And we saw it within 8 minutes against Villa.
You need it, don't you?
I don't want to
interrupt, but that's what you need, right? And that's why it's easy to go, I need to give him patience, need to give him time. That's fine, right? But you can't have that without the caveat that you need balance. Like, you just need to get results as well. Like, I'm not saying, you know, and Belago came out going, oh yeah, it was never one of the goals to get European places. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, that's not an acceptable thing to say. That's not an acceptable thing to say. That's got to be a goal. If you fall short of that and come 10th or 11th in the first season, and exactly what you said, you can see positive signs and shoots of like recovery or whatever, then fine. Like, we can't just say, our fans need to be patient with Potter. I'm sorry, but Potter also needs to accept that, you know, if implementing his style immediately is going to lead to a run of pretty shocking form like we've seen under Lopetegui, that's not good enough either. So do it gradually. Like, if implementing your style immediately is going to affect the team as much as it did for Lopetegui, then don't do it immediately. Do it slowly and just do some sensible, normal stuff first and make us look like a semi-normal football team, like we did on Friday, to be fair.
And I think the difference here is that Graham Potter is a world away in his situation, his approach is miles away from where Lopetegui is. Lopetegui was very stubborn in his approach. And this is the system we're playing. Regardless of whether you even understand what the system is or not, and we're playing it.
Yeah.
And that's it. And if you can't see what it is, then that's your problem, not mine. And we're just gonna roll with the punches.
Yeah.
Graham Potter notoriously doesn't have a favoured formation. He has a formation that he looks to. Yeah. But I saw an interview with Glenn Murray the other day. Glenn Murray,
who scored 80% of his career goals against West Ham.
As soon as I saw it, I was like, sign him so he doesn't score. He's probably tired. Just sign him anyway, just in case.
Yeah.
And he said that there were times at Brighton under Graham Potter where they would play 4 or 5 different formations in a single game.
Yeah.
He's very fluid in his approach, and he requires from his players a lot of intelligence and a lot of flexibility.
Yeah.
And that's where I think that will benefit us and the team, particularly in the short term. In that, if something doesn't work, he's not going to be like, "Well, tough, but we're going to do it."
Yeah,
Russell Martin style.
Yeah,
it's going to be right. That hasn't worked. And to be fair, I was doing the impossible job of trying to predict his first 11 against Villa the other day, and I was looking at his starting 11 in his first game against Villa as Chelsea boss at Villa Park, and I was like, right, okay, let's see if he tries to go for the same approach. And it was 3-4-1-2, I think it was, or something random like that.
Right.
And I thought, and I looked at the players that he used that day, and I looked at the players that we've got, and I went, I think that's what he's going to do. And it was miles off it. He went for a 4-2-3-1 in the end. And I was like, okay, so that's already a good sign, is that he's adapted the starting 11 and his approach based on the personnel that he's got in the squad.
Mm.
I think that's what we're going to see. It's not going to be the same formation every single week. It's not going to be the same formation within every 90 minutes. It's going to be, we might see games where he's going to be chopping and changing 3 or 4 times. That's probably later down the line once he's got the players he needs and the players have got used to it and they're a little bit more intelligent in terms of the approach. But that's why I think we've already seen in the first 90 minutes of football under him that there's something to look forward to here.
Yeah.
Whether it's exactly what we're hoping for, which is getting back into Europe and all the rest of it, remains to be seen. It's too early to say. But I think there's enough there to be excited about for the future.
Yeah.
And there's already enough there to go, right, let's just give him time to work on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's unacceptable, isn't it, for a West Ham manager or anyone at West Ham, any members of staff at the club, particularly the board, to suggest that Europe isn't a goal for West Ham every season now. Like, I'm not saying if we don't get it this year, Graham Potter should be sacked. I'm not saying that, but to sort of suggest that all we need to do is play a bit more attractive football, and we across the next 5 seasons, our average position's 10th. But if we play better football, then that's okay. No, it isn't.
It has to be an objective for any manager at the football club now. We've just had 3 years.
You've got to be knocking on the door of Europe, haven't you? Every season.
3 years in a row. We just won one of them. And we're the 16th most valuable club in the world.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no reason for us to even be considering not being in the conversation every single season. Now, that's not to say, and I've had a little bit of stick on social media about this over the last week, talking about this very thing. That's not to say that the West Ham fans or the club say that believe that we deserve to be in Europe every year.
No.
We expect to be in Europe every year.
Yeah,
that's not what West Ham fans are saying when they're saying we should be competing for those places. It's taking everything into account over the last 5 years, the stature of the football club, the finances of the football club, the quality of the players that we've already got at the club, and going, well, why is that? Why should we feel? Why should we settle for any less than at least competing for the top 8 of the Premier League?
Yeah.
And just because Villa and Newcastle have done well over the last couple of years and finished in the top 4 once each, just because this season Fulham, Brighton, and Nottingham Forest are doing well and knocking on the door, should we then go, oh, well, if they're competing for it this year, well, that's okay. We'll just finish 11th this year. Then we'll let them have a go this year. No, we should be there with them, shoulder to shoulder. With them and going, right, well, we're competing with you for this. Oh, Man United and Tottenham having terrible seasons. Well, we want to be the team that replaces them.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely spot on, mate. And I that's not to say that any season we don't get Europe, the manager gets sacked. I don't think that. But I do think we're at the stage now where I just think 11th, I just think bottom half now, the way that the league is, you've always got 6 teams every year who are terrible playing. We've spoken about it before, haven't we, James, about how the Premier League's basically split into 3 divisions now. You've got the sort of the top, like the big 5.5. But look, Tottenham are having a minging season. United are doing terrible. I know you hate Forest, but great to see what they're doing. Brilliant having Villa in the Champions League. But West Ham are in that middle division. There's no doubt about it. And to be honest, we should be near the top of that middle division. So you got like the big sort of 5.5, maybe 6. And then if you include Spurs, then West Ham and sort of the Aston Villas of the world, even Everton, the stature club, you'd expect them to be doing better than they are. Maybe they will. Well, they certainly will now Moisey's taken over. God, they're going to, honestly, you can tell, can't you? They're going to qualify for Europe in their first season in their new stadium. And then they're going to win the Conference League. I'll get your house on it.
Thomas Souček in the midfield.
Yeah. God, imagine, Vlad Soufal at right back. You can just tell that's happening, can't you? Soufal's getting a bit of the ump. Vladimir Soufal to Everton. Anyway,
put your money on Souček going there, definitely.
Yeah,
He
big style.
He won't fit Potter's style. So Souček's probably on his way out, and he's going to go to Everton, 100%.
Honestly, I can't believe it. Yeah, and no, I think it's. I think now we're at a stage where I think, obviously, you've got to take into consideration the context and injury problems and other stuff. But as a general rule, I think sort of bottom half finishes, 12th and below, like sackable offences now for a manager. I mean, you give Potter a pass this season, obviously, to an extent, and you kind of go, look, just solidify us. I still think top half's on. There's no reason why we couldn't finish top half.
It's so tight. A run of results exactly. Backing up there, yeah.
Yeah, but you appreciate that obviously we're unlikely to finish in Europe this season, so fine. But then beyond that, just as a club, I just think 12th and below is a sackable offence from now on. And even if we are finishing sort of 10th and 11th, there should be some mitigating factors in that. If there's some big serious injuries like we're having this season, to be fair. But yeah, on the whole, West Ham, the club we are, the sort of the implicit deal that we were all forced into when we were ripped away from our spiritual home of Upton Park, the thing was, well, in return for that, you'll have a team that's better on the pitch. We've only had that for 3 of the seasons, or 3.5, that we've been in that stadium. So, yeah, not acceptable for it to be dropping below that. Fingers crossed Graham Potter's the man to sort of deliver on that. Right, James, let's have a bit more of an in-depth look at the Aston Villa game next. We'll chat a bit more about Graham Potter, what we saw. We're out the FA Cup. We're out both cups now. If ever we thought the season was written off, it was just confirmed 100% on Friday by Aston Villa team, who are allergic to the FA Cup 4th round. I think it's only this 3rd time in 10 years they've reached this stage of the competition, which is quite some stat for a Premier League team. But anyway, we'll have a little bit more of a dig into that game next, James, and then we'll wrap up with some messages. All of that next. Right, Jonesy, I made a bit of a rota error here, or a bit of a scheduling error. Alex is actually working today, so he can't join us, but he made the trip up to the Midlands on Friday night, along with about 5,000-ish of his other fellow, or our fellow, diehard West Ham fans. Ollie Scholes was awarded the Man of the Match award on telly, which was great. Kilman, Mavropanos, Wan-Bissaka were the back four. Aaron Wan-Bissaka actually played as a right back. It was unbelievable scenes. Thomas Souček and Alvarez at the base of midfield. Somerville, Kudus, Paqueta and Fulkrug up front. Fabianski in goal. If I'm quite honest, but Ollie Scholes was absolutely brilliant. But, I've been unashamed in my praise of Emerson over the past few years. I think behind Jared Bowen, he's pretty much been West Ham's best and most consistent player for me. Other than that, I think you take Mavropanos out for Todibo, you put Emerson in. Given the players we've got available at the moment, you perhaps put Bowen in. I'd put Bowen in ahead of Kudus. No, actually, I wouldn't. Bowen in ahead of Lucas Paqueta. And then I think that's basically our best team. Graham Potter obviously went strong. And then, Lucas Paqueta scores in the 9th minute. It was the best thing he did all game, to be honest. It was infuriating. And then a mini sort of little collapse in 5 minutes in the second half. Amadou Onana scores, and then Morgan Rogers makes it 2-1. An absolutely outrageously bad decision to award Aston Villa a corner for one of those goals, where it literally was, the ball was miles away from anyone when the Villa player had a shot. It went straight out for a clear goal kick. Somehow they awarded a corner, and you just knew when such a scandalous decision was made that a goal was going to come from it. Give me your thoughts, James. Start wherever you fancy.
Well, it started really promisingly, didn't it? All four of our attacking players were involved in the goal, in the build-up. Fulkrug held the ball up well to Kudus to Somerville, and Somerville into Paqueta in the 9th minute, and it was like, oh, hello. They know how to play football then. Fantastic. And it felt we we were playing well, and then obviously the injury to Fulkrug happens, and it kind of just subsided very, very quickly. Obviously, Danny Ings comes on and tries to play the Fulkrug role and just can't, just not able to do that.
No.
So we lost a little bit of impetus going forward, but given how many shots we conceded every single game against under Lopetegui, that first half, Villa didn't have a single shot.
No.
Not a single
They
shot.
did have 16 in the second half, to be fair.
Yes, but I mean, there are mitigating circumstances around that. But it was like immediately at half time, I'm looking at it going, bloody hell, it's just the impact he's had already tactically, without even changing the formation, has been profound. It's like, how on earth did Lopetegui not achieve that? What was he not seeing? And immediately I was like, yes, this it's not perfect, definitely not perfect. And we've been lucky that Villa haven't been fantastic. I mean, Roy Keane at half time was laid properly into them, called them shocking and all the rest of it, and said that one
shocking.
That one training session must have been an absolute blinder from Potter because of the way that we were playing. And it was like, yeah, but we have played well, and we've deserved to go in 1-0 up. But you just knew with the Fulkrug injury, we'd lost a little bit going forward.
Really gutted for him about that. Mate.
The way he pulled up as well, we just knew straight away. Just like, he's gone.
That's another month. You can't help but feel for him, can you? I really do. I feel so terrible for him.
Yeah, and I felt for him.
For anyone who's not sure, didn't watch, Nicholas Fulkrug pulled up with a hamstring injury while he was busting a gut to try and put some pressure on Villa up the pitch. He started well and pulled up in the first half. Subbed off. Looks like he'll be out for about a month at least.
Yeah, I mean, I felt sorry for it because a lot of people have called him a bit of a flop and XYZ. Really loud into. A lot of people laying into him saying he's a terrible signing. It's like, well, hang on, how can you even come to that conclusion? No, the guy's barely played. He's now had 2 serious injuries.
Yeah. One he picked up on international duty.
Yeah, and he scored 2 goals as substitute.
Yeah. In games, just because we lost the games, people sort of forget, but he's put the ball in it, hasn't he?
And I think once we get fit again, I think he showed within 15 minutes of play that he can be useful for us in a system. So I'm gutted that he's out, and it leaves us very, very short. But yeah, that first half was great. The second half, I just felt like we lost our way a little bit because we didn't have a focal point up front. And then obviously Somerville went off. That was 2 of our attacking players. He's gone off at half time. Yeah,
he got a iffy injury, didn't he? That looks just one of them awkward ones, just unlucky.
Yeah, he tried playing on, and apparently he wanted to play on, but Graham Potter said he wanted to, but he took him off for precaution. So hopefully,
sensibly so as well.
Sensibly so, yeah. So I just felt that you just knew that Villa are going to get on top here, and they are going to have chances. And I think he ended up bringing Soufal on, putting him at right back, and put Wan-Bissaka on at right wing. Yeah. And I was like, a little bit rogue, but to be fair, Wan-Bissaka's been playing there all season anyway, so it doesn't matter. Yeah.
And he had no one. He spot on. Yeah, you've got that nail in the head there. And he had no one on the bench really. I know Luis Guilherme.
Well,
who come on, did absolutely nothing at the end.
I did think, well, why don't you just put Luis Guilherme on? He's a natural. Right winger.
Don't rate him, do they?
Maybe not. I mean, Potter hasn't seen enough of him to rate him, I don't think. But just play him.
One training
at least have Wan-Bissaka in his more natural right back role.
I'd put it this way: I'd rather have Vladimir Soufal and Wan-Bissaka on the pitch than like Wan-Bissaka and Luis Guilherme. I don't know why. That feels more robust to me. It feels 2 more established professionals.
Maybe, I don't know, but yeah, you just knew that Villa were going to come out in the second half a little bit stronger, and the way in which they got their 2 goals. To be fair, innit? Yeah, the way in which they got 2. The first goal, obviously, you've already said it. It's just never a corner, like in a million years.
It's just so stupid.
It's not even close, mate. Like, why have you even? No. Not even the Lino should have seen it, and he's gone.
He got one wrong about 5 minutes before as well, where Villa should have had a corner. He gave us a goal kick, and I got a feeling that was just in his head. Because they all kicked off about
at least hide it. If you're gonna wait, think level
wait for another 50-50.
Yeah, just like it's not even close, mate. But yeah, and then I did feel that the Rodgers goal, it shouldn't have been on the pitch, if I'm honest. Like
No, definitely not. You're so
should have been on the
right.
pitch.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Should have been sent off, is what you're saying, isn't it?
Yeah, he should have been sent off. The first yellow, like the first one, he pulled Soufal back, didn't get a yellow for it, and then he did the same to Wan-Bissaka further up the pitch and finally got booked.
Yeah, totally agree, mate.
It's like, mate, this is where the consistency comes in. This is why fans just have had enough of refereeing in this country.
Well, the thing is, it wasn't.
You've booked him. He's made the same foul twice.
Yeah,
which regardless, whether you do it once, twice, 5 times, is a yellow card offence on your first offence.
Yeah.
And you booked him once for 2 of them, and it just doesn't make any sense. And then he goes and scores the winner. And like, it just really, really angers me that this sort of thing still happens in the game today. I know we didn't have VAR, but VAR.
It weren't a VAR. None of them were VAR things, were they?
No, VAR can't step in a corner or yellow card.
Any of those decisions. Tim Robinson, it was the ref, and I couldn't agree more, James.
It's just
a performance.
It says a lot about the standards in this country that even after a game that doesn't have VAR, the PGMOL are still centre of the debate and centre of the attention.
Yeah,
it just frustrates the life out of me that these things still happen.
Yeah. I just think it's just rubbish. But you're totally right. So, and that's why, I mean, it's infuriating when that stuff happens. But it was nice to feel like we hadn't lost the game on our own. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't like fuming and disheartened afterwards, because I was like, we've had 2 injuries to big players there, which is really unfortunate. And then we've had 2 absolutely minging decisions. I'd like to have all 4 big impactful things like that happen in a game and still only lose 2-1 against, I would say, by the way, Aston Villa's pretty much their strongest team. Obviously, they wanted to make a thing of it for the 150th anniversary. And we still didn't play in claret and blue. That rattled me a bit. It's like they play black shirts and then, all right, we'll play claret and blue then.
We probably didn't.
It's our birthday. You're not allowed to wear that.
Just out of respect to Villa, otherwise we'd been playing in obviously both our colours, but on their home ground. But I don't know. I quite like that white.
Childish. I hate it. I think it's minging, the white one.
Yeah, I quite like it. I think it's quite classy.
Absolutely grim. I hate it. But so and again, sometimes you have got to take your hat off and tip your hat or doff your hat, whatever it's called, to the and accept that they came out and they played well, like they played better in the second half. Yeah, definitely. But disappointing. I don't really feel like we really deserve to actually lose that.
We had chances in the second half still, even though they were the better side. We did have opportunities. Danny Ings had a couple. Couple of absolute worldy chances that he should have at least hit the target on both and didn't. We had opportunities, but see, when you lose two of your attacking players, you're in trouble, aren't you?
Yeah. And mate, you know what it was? What I liked, it was square pegs in square holes.
Yes,
that's exactly what it was. Ollie Scholes, where'd you play? I'm a left back. You could play left back then, mate. Wan-Bissaka, you've been playing right wing all season. Yeah. You're not really comfortable there, are you? Not really. No, I'm sort of pretty much like one of the best defensive right backs in the league. Tell you what, then. Play right back in a defensive position. All right, nice one. Yeah. You know our 2 like clearly, obviously best holding midfielders. What, Alvarez and Souček? Yeah. I'm going to play you 2 there. Oh right. Oh blimey, nice one. One thing I do want to say though, and that was throughout the pitch, right? I feel like everyone played in their best position pretty much. That attacking 3, Paqueta, Kudus, and Somerville.
Could have centrally as well, which is what I've been crying out for a while.
Yeah. One thing I just want to say, though, James, I know he scored the goal, Paqueta, but other than that, I'm just not having him at the moment. I know everyone's been saying it for a while. I just thought that he's clearly so good, right? And I think what we saw from him on Friday night was like I just thought it was pathetic. Like he's just that second gear Lucas Paqueta, right? And I know there's other stuff going on at the moment, which is fine. But I'm sorry, he's the joint highest earner at the club with Jared Bowen, 150 grand a week. And I just think it's not good enough. It's not acceptable. Like he's got the aura of someone's like, oh, I'm better than West Ham. So, I'm just going to going through the motions. And I know he scored, right? Nice finish, really good finish. He had one shortly after where if he'd have taken a touch rather than trying to shoot again, almost the exact same position, I feel like we could have been 2-0 in quick succession. But he's so weak. The amount of times he's thrown himself on the floor, and like referees just aren't buying it either. It's not like he's consistently getting us fouls and you think, oh, he's being clever there. It's like, no. Like, even for their goal, Ezri Konsa, there's a minor clash and he goes down holding his face. And it's like, what are you doing, man? Engage. Like, there isn't VAR today, which you should know anyway. Like, get up. He did it loads of times. And I don't know, so many of these, like, he's just doing loads of these sort of half-assed flicks. And he's just not on it. You can tell he's not on it. He's just sort of sauntering around. I think because he's such a naturally gifted footballer, which he clearly is, even like sauntering about, and which is kind of his style anyway, but you could just tell there's a difference. There's a bit of a lack of urgency there. And he puts a couple of tackles in, but it's like, oh, I'll make a couple of slide tackles. And then the rest of the time, he's just sort of lolloping around and like going down easily. I'm like, it's not good enough, man. Like, come on. Like, you're our joint highest earner, and you just wouldn't get a performance like that from Jared Bowen. Like, I appreciate that part of his sort of style is that he'll lose the ball semi-regularly, but I just think it's just not acceptable. From sort of one of our best players, it's not okay. You got Ahmed Kudus. I think his end product still leaves so much to be desired. He gets himself into good positions, but I agree that him playing centrally was a positive. But I honestly think in that sort of attacking midfield trio, or those three attacking midfield positions, I think it's Somerville and Bowen, when everyone's fit, are the absolute hands down no-brainers. And then I think you have Kudus in the middle. I was asked the other day who I felt our best starting 11 was. I had, it's funny, I had Kudus on the bench and then Paqueta in the number 10 position. But I think after Friday's showing, I probably would change that a bit and you'd play Kudus, Somerville on the left and Bowen on the right. I think, I think that they've been sort of excellent all season. But just wanted to sign off on that. And fair play to Ollie Scarles as well, by the way. Absolutely brilliant performance. Rightfully given the Man of the Match award as well. Right, Jonesy, I think we'll wrap up for the Aston Villa section. It's been a long old podcast this week, but nice to do on a Sunday morning. I hope everyone enjoys the bit of a longer one that we've done. We'll wrap up on that Villa section. Lots to cover, of course. We'll have some final thoughts and a few of your messages next. Right, there we have it then, James. Let's bring to an end this bit of a mammoth podcast, but I've quite enjoyed this Sunday morning. I mean, the sun's not out anymore. It's got a bit cloudy and all the frost has gone. But thoroughly enjoyable conversation, Jonesy. I hope everyone's enjoyed the sort of extra length podcast. Just a reminder, those who signed up to patreon.com/We Are West Ham podcast will get this pod 24 hours before everyone else. You'll also get the Fulham opposition view early as well. Jonesy, on that note, you've got a couple of messages from the Patreon, and those, of course, we will be prioritising for readouts on the podcast. So what have we got?
So our first sign up, the first listener to sign up to our Patreon was Paul Mulligan's Irons from Insta. He said he's listening to the latest pod as he types this, and he's happy to support. So thanks, Paul.
Legend Paul is always getting in touch.
And another one always get in touch, normally via email, this time via Patreon, is Jim Odie. Said he's subscribed, and as it's a night game, he's just wondering if we're around for a beer on Tuesday. Still not sure yet, Jim, but we'll let you know if we are.
But we are going to be doing that. Sorry, James, you got another one for me?
Yeah, no, he followed it up by saying, P.S. be interesting to see how we go tonight. Obviously, it's the night of the Villa game. Do we get the new manager bounce? Fingers crossed. And nobody gave us much hope at Newcastle early in the season either, which is obviously very true. We've got a performance, just not the result. Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to be doing that, James, aren't we? We get quite a lot of messages on the podcast asking if me and James were around for a beer before or after games, with listeners keen to meet up and have a chat. And we are going to be doing that as the rest of this season develops a little bit. We're just trying to sort out exactly the details and when and where we'll be able to do these things. But for the Patreon members, we will be doing
we'll be dropping a location in the build-up to certain games before and or after, where you can Patreon members can come along and have a pint with me and James before or after a specific home game and sort of chew the fat on all things West Ham. Tell us a bit about the podcast, what you like and you don't like. So we'll be doing that as details go on. So keep your eyes peeled, those of you who signed up to Patreon already, because me and James will be letting you know where you can come along and have a pint with us at the home games. Right, James, another message from a regular listener to the podcast, Darius Burrows. He messaged about the picture of Potter and Stuyton, which we went backward and forward with. And he's just messaged and said, despite the loss, I really enjoyed Friday night, the Aston Villa game. It's lovely to have that feeling of excitement and hope before a match again. I like the way we set up, love the fact he picked Skulls, and I think Potter's immediate challenge will be to restore some belief in the team. As soon as Villa got their first dodgy goal, I felt us leaking a second was inevitable. But onwards and upwards, come on, you Irons. Nice one, Darius. A bit of positive feeling there. Mark Scott, right, who gets involved. We know Mark. He's he loves digging me out on the Insta DMs, which I don't mind at all. He's just messaged on Friday, said, can Will possibly deal with seeing David Moyes back in an Everton training top? And Mark always happy to give me a bit of grief. But one thing I will say with that, I'm sort of comforted, James, by the fact that I've been saying for ages that David Moyes to Everton is the only it sort of felt right. It just felt like a romantic fairy tale that he would go back there, and they sort of felt like the only club of appropriate stature for David Moyes whose fans wouldn't completely balk at the his sort of style of play and his approach. So fingers crossed. I really hope David does well there, and I'm sure he definitely will. You just know we're losing to Everton this season, don't you, James?
100%, yeah.
But yeah, Mark Scott there. Mark, and if you want to get your all your messages digging me out read out just as regularly on the podcast as we have up until now, sign up to the Patreon. Albin Grill as well on Insta went to the he didn't. He replied to Alex's story on the podcast account from the away end at Villa Park on Friday and said, not too bad for Potter's second day in his new job, right? I'm actually optimistic about Tuesday. He's travelling from Sweden to London on Monday to watch the Fulham game and Crystal Palace if you want to grab a pint. Me and James will be doing some meetups as the rest of this season goes on. You've mentioned to Paul there. Paul's also said, James, I've been against Potter since he was mentioned to replace Moyes, but it's time for me to shut up, get behind him, and hope that I'm wrong. Which, I like that. I like that approach. Michael Donstov as well. Jonesy gets involved in the DMs quite a lot. His review from Friday. It looked good for the first 60 minutes. The changes I expected with Potter's were the changes I expected Potter to make were there from the start. West Ham stretched out the game, though, had more space and more direct. The problem was the same when Moyes came to us the first time. Our players are really out of form and they struggle to run. Potter's style of play demands speed and stamina, but the passing looked good. But then again, that is all they've been doing for 7 months. Some will say that Villa's second goal was no good, but after seeing it 4 different angles, I would say it was good, but ugly. I think questions about whether there was a foul or not. I think Kilman should probably be more on his toes. As usual, all you could hear on the telly was the West Ham fans in the away end. I'm disappointed, yes, and I hate dropping out the cup, but I'm not disappointed in the team. It's a bit sad, but this is the best I've seen us play this season. Hats off to Michael there. He gets involved in the DMs a lot. Overall, James, it feels like a bit more of a positive sort of sense and a positive feeling around the West Ham fans at the club. Was there anything in all of those messages you particularly liked the sound of or wanted to react to at all?
I think it's all fair for once. No one's kicking off. No one's having a pop at you, which is a shame.
No, for a change. Just Mark Scott, obviously, but he loves Scott,
it. Keep it up, Mark. But other than that, I agree with all of it, really. I think, particularly on that point with Graham Potter and what he wants from his players, that's another thing that we're going to have to be patient with, because we can't really be expecting Edson Alvarez to have pace and all the rest of it in midfield. It's going to take time for him to get the players in that are going to fit those profiles. But yeah, I'm just as optimistic as a lot of those messages, and I'm very enthused about what the immediate future might bring.
Yeah, and Michael Wood as well. He messaged in last week. It's a great podcast today. I just hope Potter gets done now. This was before it had been. I went back to him, of course. Asked him if he thinks Potter's the answer to get us back to where we were. And Michael, sort of backing up what we said earlier, Woodstock Irons on Insta. Last 2 seasons, we finished 14th and then 9th. We've got to aim for the top half for me. Not sure we'll always get Europe. Pretty much exactly what we said. Obviously, when he says we finished 14th, we won the Europa Conference League that season. So, sort of absolutely, totally fine. Also, James, I'd just like to, I meant to say, Darius, who we mentioned earlier, a few people messaged me asking for the parsnip and butternut squash recipe that we spoke about on the podcast before Christmas. And Darius was one of those people, and I put it out to him, and he sent me a picture of it. His missus cooked it on Christmas Day, and they absolutely loved it, apparently. Amazing. So I did send it to you, but I didn't get any feedback, so I assume you sort of sacked that one off immediately.
Didn't get around to it in the end. We had so much other things to sort out. I was cooking for 11, and I had a lot to think about with a bit of beef and a turkey. So I was a bit like, no, I feel under too much pressure to try something new.
Fair enough.
On a day like this, but I will try it. It's on my wish list.
Yeah. Well, Darius and a couple of the other people who asked for the recipe, I tried it. So we're really branching out in this podcast, James. That's not reason to sign up to the Patreon. Not only do you get cutting edge West Ham news and analysis, you also get Michelin star quality recipes every now and then. But listen, James, talking of turkeys, it's goodbye to Julen Lopetegui, and I think most of us would arguably say good riddance. Both in agreement that the announcement to get rid of him should have happened probably 48 hours earlier, when it became apparent that he was, in your words, a dead man walking. No one will look back on his reign with that much fondness. I think he'll sort of fall into the Manuel Pellegrini category of former managers, and I actually he was considerably worse, I think, than Pellegrini. Pellegrini showed some flashes at some stages, but the new Graham Potter era has kicked off, albeit with a defeat at Aston Villa. And James, before I do my elaborate sign off, you've got a little bit, have you not? There's a bit of a spooky spooky pattern emerging as far as first and last games for West Ham managers go.
Yeah, I noticed this the other day. Was David Moyes' last game as West Ham manager was against Man City. Lopetegui's first game was against Villa. His last game was against Man City. And then obviously Potter's first game was against Aston Villa.
Yeah.
His last game in charge of Chelsea was against Aston Villa. Weirdly enough, if you want more, I've got more.
I've got more for you as well. Julen Lopetegui's fit. Go on.
No, go on. No, I think I know what you're going to say, so I'll let you have this one.
Julen Lopetegui's first game was a 2-1 loss to Aston Villa, with the first goal scorer Lucas Paqueta and the first goal conceded being Amadou Onana from a corner. Graham Potter's first game in charge, 2-1 loss to Aston Villa, first goal scorer Lucas Paqueta, first goal conceded Amadou Onana from a corner.
It would have been strange if the one in Potter's game was also a penalty from Paqueta as well. That would have added. But yeah, very, very strange little trends happening here at the moment. Just worried about when we play Man City next, if I'm honest. When the fixtures come out for next season, if we're playing City first around about November time, I'm concerned.
Yeah,
I'm very, very concerned. But yeah, all eyes on the next one against City.
Yeah, it's a bit like Jared Bowen, who's like the manager sacker, isn't he? He scored the most goals prior to a manager getting sacked against another team than anyone else in the league or something, I think. Right, enjoyed that, Jonesy. A bit of a long one to sort of kick off things, but lots to cover. I was midway through my sort of elaborate sign-off there, Turkey related and Lopetegui, which I thought was a nice link, but I thought of that spooky little stat that was worth mentioning. We're out of both cups. We're in the bottom half of the Premier League table. Everyone sort of accepted that the season is a write-off, but there is some positivity about Graham Potter having taken over the club. Like you say, West Ham fans will likely need to be patient. I hope we see that patience, but that patience comes at a cost. It's not for Graham Potter. The onus is also on him to do things slowly and steadily as well, and pick up some results in the short term. Like, it's not good enough to do what Julen Lopetegui did and go, this is the style I want to implement, and I don't care how crap the team look while we get there. That's not okay. West Ham fans will be patient as long as they can see something and see some signs of promise. There was none of those under Julen Lopetegui, and every sort of win or result we got felt like a bit of a fluke rather than any sort of deliberate ploy, but there's some positivity already after the performance at Aston Villa. So fingers crossed that feeling of positivity sticks around for most of this season. I think it's fair to say that we won't be seeing West Ham in Europe again and for at least another couple of years, which is a shame and perhaps didn't have to be this way, but we are where we are. Graham Potter at the helm. He's going to be better than Lopetegui. Let's hope that in time he can bring our club back to the heady heights of European away days and spectacular showpieces at home. Only time will tell, but let's get behind Potter for the time being. Thanks for listening, everyone. Don't forget to follow us on all of our socials. And if you like what we do, sign up to the Patreon, patreon.com/wearewestham podcast. And West Ham are still massive. Up the hammers. And we'll speak to you with a Fulham opposition view later this week.